Good afternoon. I'm Bruce Gardner, Executive Director of the Maryland Transportation Authority. I want to welcome all of the engineering firms, contractors, and subcontractors joining us today to learn about the process in which we will rebuild the Key Bridge. Before we get going, I'd like to acknowledge and recognize the work that has been done by MDTA, local, state, and federal partners to date. As you can imagine, this has been a massive effort. But in working together, we have been able to start working immediately to clear the debris to reopen the channel. We have begun discussions on the swift actions needed and allowable to rebuild the new bridge. We have selected a progressive design-build process as the procurement method. And we have started working on an RFP to put out to the industry for the bridge rebuild. The collapse of the Key Bridge on March 26th brought local communities in Baltimore and Maryland together like never before. Not only are we grieving the loss of an iconic structure and a lifeline to thousands of people who cross the bridge each day, 6 families are without a husband, a father, a brother, and a friend. That we must never forget. And the rebuilding of the Key Bridge will honor those individuals in the best way possible. Nobody could have anticipated the tragedy of the Key Bridge collapse on March 26th, and the traffic impacts have gone far beyond a vital missing link on I-695. 39,000 vehicles that cross the Key Bridge each weekday are now forced to use I-895, the Baltimore Harbor Tunnel, and I-95, the Fort McHenry Tunnel. This has created significant delays and commute times for everyone using the crossings, not to mention additional traffic to the local system and city streets. While we are moving at rapid speed to rebuild the bridge to reconnect the Beltway, as well as the communities on both sides of the Patapsco River, there are specific steps we need to take for the rebuild process. We'll be sharing those details with you today, and we want to be able to provide you with information on how you can participate. I'd like to stress, and this will be repeated by the team, that the progressive design-build process is unique, and that the contract is just the beginning of the opportunities associated with a rebuild. Industry engagement will be an ongoing process. The purpose of this industry forum is to discuss the upcoming progressive design-build procurement and the flexibility it will afford us as we move from demo to design and ultimately to construction. The team will also briefly discuss 2 other contract opportunities we are currently pursuing to assist with the rebuild. Later in the forum, you will hear reference to a subsequent engineering contract to serve as a general engineering contract, as well as a construction management inspection contract. Finally, we want to inform our minority and small business community on how they can obtain DBE certification if they are not yet certified. The question and answer session today will be used to help us refine the request for proposals. MDTA anticipates issuing the RFP by the end of May, and the turnaround time to submit proposals will be quicker than normal. The attendees from today will be posted to the keybridgerebuild.com website tomorrow. So I encourage you to connect with one another for potential partnering opportunities. As I said before, this is a massive effort, and we need as many partners as possible pulling in one direction to help us accomplish our goals. I will now turn it over to Andrew Bing, our moderator for the day. Thanks again for being here. Andrew?
Thank you, Bruce. Once again, I am Andrew Bing, and I will be leading today's industry forum. I want to thank everyone for joining us this afternoon to discuss the Maryland Transportation Authority's first steps in rebuilding the Key Bridge, a critical piece of infrastructure for both Baltimore and the Northeast Corridor. Your participation in this forum is essential, and we have structured today's presentation and discussion to ensure it is both informative and interactive. We're here to make this process as transparent and inclusive as possible. Let's talk about the format for the forum. First, our presenters will share important information related to the upcoming RFP. After this information is presented, we will respond to questions that have been asked by the attendees. You can submit questions at any time by going to the Q&A window on your screen and entering your question. There is also an option to post your questions anonymously. We will respond to as many questions as we can get to, as more than 1,700 individuals from over 360 organizations registered for today's forum. All questions and the responses will be posted on our project website, keybridgerebuild.com, for your reference. A quick housekeeping note about the Zoom platform. Within Zoom, to adjust the size of the shared screen and speaker video, hover your pointer over the boundary between the two until your pointer changes to a double arrow and you see a gray line separating both views. Click and drag the separator to adjust the size of each view. I would now like to introduce our panel for the forum. Joining me today are Jim Harkness, Brian Wolf, Jan Walker-Imogo, and Jeff Davis. I would like to ask each of them to introduce themselves.
Hi, I'm Jim Harkness, Chief Engineer for Maryland Transportation Authority, and I'm overseeing the Key Bridge Rebuild Program.
Hi, I'm Brian Wolf, Director of Project Development with the Maryland Transportation Authority, and I will be the contract manager for this contract.
Hi, I'm Jan Walker-Imogo, Director of the Office of Minority Business Enterprise at the Maryland Department of Transportation. I oversee the certification process for minority-owned firms.
And I'm Jeff Davis, Deputy Director of Procurement with the Maryland Transportation Authority. I will be the procurement officer for this contract.
Before we move on, let's briefly review Title VI of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. It is crucial for us to acknowledge that no person shall be excluded from participation, denied benefits, or subjected to discrimination under any program or activity on the grounds of race, color, national origin, sex, English proficiency, or disability. This commitment to equity underpins all our efforts and ensures that public services, like transportation, are accessible to all, including populations with limited English proficiency. I will now have Jim discuss how MDTA has responded to the Key Bridge collapse.
Thank you, Andrew. Let me start by saying we are praying for the families of all the victims of the Key Bridge collapse. Governor Moore has been clear on his 4 directives: give closure to the victims' families, clear the channel and open the port, take care of those affected by the emergency, and finally, rebuild the Key Bridge. MDTA has been working hand in hand with local and state and federal partners to respond to the Key Bridge emergency. 2 of the directives that we will be discussing during this industry forum are how MDTA is supporting the current effort to clear the channel, and of course, the future effort of rebuilding the Key Bridge. Following the collapse of the Key Bridge, MDTA entered into an emergency contract with Skanska USA Civil. Skanska is tasked with clearing portions of the Key Bridge wreckage outside of the Federal Navigational Channel. At the time of the collapse, Skanska was under contract with MDTA working on the Nice Middleton Bridge replacement project. Since they were already mobilized for that project, it was expeditious and efficient for them to perform debris removal at the site of the emergency. Now that I've covered our ongoing efforts to clear the channel, we will transition to talking about what MDTA is looking for in a progressive design build partner. For this critical infrastructure project, we are looking to foster robust collaboration among team members, local communities, and stakeholders, ensuring open communication and inclusive partnership opportunities, particularly for small and disadvantaged businesses. Our aim is to expediently complete the bridge design, with the design builder adhering to an aggressive delivery schedule to meet the firm goal of opening all lanes to vehicular traffic in the fall of 2028, while strategically sequencing work to minimize disruption to shipping. Ensuring safety on this project is paramount. Our objective is 0 fatalities or serious injuries, while maintaining safe passage for all maritime activities. The project emphasizes high-quality design and materials to create a resilient, aesthetically pleasing structure that exceeds a 75-year service life. We are seeking a team that manages costs effectively, provides transparency in financial dealings, and stays within negotiated budgets. Additionally, the bridge's design should minimize environmental impacts to the Patapsco River and enhance the visual landscape, serving as a welcoming gateway to the city and Port of Baltimore. The success of a project with national significance hinges on selecting the best team to complete the key bridge rebuild work. We are looking for a highly qualified team of experts that best aligns with our project goals, technical needs, and accelerated timeline. We need a team with specialized technical expertise in long-span bridge design and construction, extensive expertise in alternative project delivery, and a thorough understanding of specific design, permitting, and construction requirements unique to Maryland.
Thank you, Jim. I will now have Brian Wolf discuss the project delivery method.
Thank you, Andrew. At this time, a National Environmental Policy Act, or NEPA, documented categorical exclusion is being prepared, with FHWA as the lead federal agency and MDTA in cooperation with SHA as the lead state agency. NEPA is anticipated to be completed this summer. In addition, FHWA and MDTA are working closely with both state and federal permitting agencies to ensure that permits are obtained in order to meet the aggressive rebuild schedule. We are preparing a procurement to bring on design and construction expertise to help us develop a plan that addresses the project's goals. Our approach will be through a two-phase progressive design-build contract, which emphasizes collaboration and flexibility to adapt to emerging needs and changes. Progressive design-build, or PDB, follows a model similar to traditional design-build, involving a single contract that unites MDTA with the PDB entity, which includes both contractor and designer roles. This procurement will select a highly qualified team to provide initial project development services that will determine the project scope and requirements in collaboration with MDTA. Upon successful completion of Phase 1, the PDB will have the exclusive negotiating rights for Phase 2 services through the Guaranteed Maximum Price, or GMP, process. If a GMP is not successfully agreed upon, the PDB loses the right to construct the project, and MDTA will deliver the work under a separate contracting mechanism. For this procurement, MDTA will be using a single-step procurement for Phase 1 services. For the single-step procurement process, proposers will submit their proposals with qualifications included in response to the RFP, which is expected to be advertised later this month. Qualifications are anticipated to focus on the capability of the offering team, approach to the project, and the PDB, and methods for estimating and successfully reaching a GMP. MDTA will select a progressive design-build team for Phase 1 services based on a combination of both qualifications and price. MDTA does not anticipate a firm price commitment from the proposers as part of the RFP. Specific elements of Phase 1 will include preliminary engineering tasks, bridge concept development, and some detailed design sufficient to allow negotiations for a guaranteed maximum price before moving to Phase 2. There will be opportunities for businesses of all sizes and specialties to contribute to the rebuilding of the Key Bridge. The work elements for the project will be divided into two main phases. Phase 1 services will include preliminary design and professional services. There will not be an RFP issued for Phase 2 services. A guaranteed maximum price will be developed and agreed upon when design is advanced to a significant level within Phase 1. Once the GMP is negotiated, Phase 2 of the PDB will commence. This effort will involve finalizing the design, developing the various work packages, and then construction. Phase 2 services will be placed into multiple work packages, and the original contract will be modified. Multiple GMPs may be agreed upon for standalone construction packages. Phase 2 services will include final design and construction. So why did MDTA choose Progressive Design Build for this contract? The Progressive Design Build procurement process is streamlined into one step, eliminating the need for creating a short list or reduced list of candidates. The initial scope is deliberately broad, allowing MDTA and the PDB team to collaboratively find cost-effective solutions, similar to a planning and preliminary engineering contract. As the project progresses, it's possible to draft further agreements to incorporate final design and construction phases. Design packages and other work scopes will be refined and issued, provided the pricing is acceptable.
Okay, thank you, Brian. Jeff will now discuss how the industry can get involved.
Thank you, Andrew. For those interested in partnering with us, we encourage you to reach out to your industry colleagues who are forming teams to apply to the upcoming RFP. The RFP for Phase 1 services will be posted on eMaryland Marketplace Advantage, or EMMA, which is the State of Maryland's electronic bid board. MDTA plans on using a strategic approach to rate the proposals and identify the offer that provides the most advantageous proposal to the state of Maryland. Today's virtual industry forum information will be posted on both EMMA and keybridgerebuild.com. With a project of this scale comes requirements for a contractor or a joint venture to demonstrate a bonding capacity of at least $500 million. Specific bonding requirements will be subject to negotiation prior to Phase 2 GMPs. Jim's now going to address contract staffing needs.
Thank you, Jeff. A project of this scale and national significance will require multiple construction years, involve significant staffing needs, and large labor pools from multiple trades. A timely and predictable construction schedule is of significant concern. The progressive design builder will be evaluated on a plan that demonstrates how to recruit, train, and retain staff. The size of this project can present challenges to staffing resources on its own, but when you consider the slate of major civil construction programs in the Maryland, District of Columbia, Northern Virginia region over the next 5 to 10 years, the competition for labor will be high. Due to these tightening labor market conditions and the size and complexity of the Key Bridge rebuild work, we anticipate that the ability to use a PLA may help the design builder to deliver a timely and successful completion of a replacement bridge. FHWA has acknowledged MDTA's desire to move forward with the RFP while continuing to evaluate the benefit of using a PLA for this project. MDTA will evaluate the project in conformance with Governor Moore's executive order issued in November of 2023. Any PLA, if required, will need to be consistent with the guidelines set forth in the governor's executive order and meet FHWA's interim guidance from 2010.
Okay, thank you, Jim. I will now turn it over to Jan to discuss Disadvantaged Business Enterprise Certification.
Thank you, Andrew. The design build team should not only have a diverse set of skills and expertise, but also reflect a range of perspectives and life experiences to engage in the work and with the community. Becoming certified as a Disadvantaged Business Enterprise, or DBE, opens the door for firms seeking growth opportunities in transportation-related projects. For businesses interested in DBE certification, the Maryland Department of Transportation's website is your starting point for certification. Our site offers comprehensive resources, detailed checklists, and the application form needed to start the process. The Application Assistance Workshop. Business owners, please take advantage of this valuable opportunity and mark your calendars for May 10th at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. This workshop is a crucial step in understanding the certification process and ensuring your application is complete and correct. Early registration is key to securing your spot, so register today. If you need additional assistance, our dedicated team is here to help. Every Thursday, the Minority Business Enterprise Office offers 30-minute one-on-one application cursory reviews with business owners. These sessions are designed to review the documentation required on your checklist, ensuring you feel confident and are well prepared as you go through the certification process. If you need to schedule an appointment, email us at mbe@mdot.maryland.gov. If you have further questions about your DBE application, please use the email provided in this presentation to contact us. Jeff will now discuss the contract's DBE goal setting.
Thanks, Jan. Funding for the reconstruction is expected to include federal funds, which means that the upcoming RFP will include federal DBE goals. These goals can only be met through the participation of MDOT certified DBE firms. The upcoming RFP will be focusing on Phase 1 professional services related to the design of the new bridge. This means that the prime contractor will strive to achieve the DBE goals by partnering with MDOT certified DBE firms that can meet the challenges of this scope of work. Once MDTA is prepared to award Phase 2 services to the prime contractor, such as advanced work packages, long lead time procurements, and GMP packages, DBE goals will be set for each given package. Once again, the prime contractor will be looking for firms that can provide the types of services needed in each package. The progressive design builder will be required to perform industry outreach targeting DBE firms prior to each package. It is also anticipated that Phase 2 packages will include federal on-the-job training goals. These OJT goals for Phase 2 work will be determined concurrently with the DBE goals. I'm now going to provide a review of planned procurements. The anticipated PDB procurement schedule begins today with the virtual industry forum. The RFP will be advertised later this month, with proposals due in 3 to 4 weeks, culminating in an award made in 4 to 6 weeks after proposals are received. MDTA anticipates that the Progressive Design Build RFP will preclude the entities listed on this slide from participation. This list is based on our understanding today and is subject to change. MDTA anticipates 2 additional procurements that will provide owners' representation services for the Key Bridge project. The first opportunity is a general engineering consultant contract. This is expected to be a single award, open-ended, task-based contract in the not-to-exceed amount of $75 million to be procured by a single-step request for proposals. The advertisement of this contract is expected in June 2024. The second opportunity is a construction management and inspection contract series. This series is expected to consist of 3 awards that total the not-to-exceed amount of $60 million of open-ended, task-based contracts to be procured by a single-step RFP. The advertisement of this contract series is expected in July 2024. MDTA anticipates advertising these contracts after the PDB contract has been advertised. There may be overlap between the PDB and the owner's representation procurements, and firms should plan their teaming approaches accordingly. These additional contracts may be advertised concurrently, or they may be staggered. Entities involved in the Progressive Design Build will not be selectable on the GEC or CMI contracts, but firms will be allowed to submit on both the GEC and CMI contracts. A few things I would like to note for prospective offerers is that while we attempt to include all relevant information in the RFP, if you have any questions, reach out early and often. This will give the MDTA sufficient time to provide responses to your questions. All questions and responses related to the RFP will be posted online for the benefit of all interested parties. I ask that you pay special attention to all submittal requirements, all submittal dates, and all DBE and project goals. Evaluation factors for selection will be explicitly detailed in the RFP, but remember that we are looking for a design build team that we feel best represents our goals for this contract.
Thank you, Jeff and team. That was a lot of information to digest. As a reminder, this presentation will be posted online for reference. We are going to take a short break before moving on to the Q&A session of the Industry Forum.
Thank you for joining the Rebuilding the Key Bridge Industry Forum. If you have a question, you can submit it using the Zoom Q&A panel. To adjust the size of the shared screen and speaker video, hover your pointer over the boundary between the two until your pointer changes to a double arrow and you see a gray line separating both views. Click and drag the separator to adjust the size of each view. Thanks again for joining us today.
We are going to get started with the Q&A. If you have a question, simply type it into the Zoom Q&A window on your screen. If you prefer to ask anonymously, there's an option too. Just select Post as Anonymous. As a reminder, there are over 1,700 registrants for today's industry forum. We will do our best to address as many questions as time allows. Okay, we're going to get going with our questions, and we've got a lot, so we're going to get through as many as we can in the time we have. And Brian, I'm going to bring the first question to you. Is the plan to replace the entire bridge or only the part of the bridge that collapsed?
So NEPA is still under development, and through that process, we'll determine if a new roadway and a cross-section and grade will be necessary, and whether or not those elements will require removal of sections of the bridge that are still standing.
Okay, thanks, Brian. Jim, I'm going to come to you with the next question. Does MDTA anticipate this project will include removal and clearing of debris or dredging in the shipping channel after the initial clearing operation is complete?
The upcoming contract may include a demo of the existing bridge, but a removal of wreckage or dredging in the shipping channel is not anticipated, but it could be contemplated by the design builder if it provided them in a cost-effective way to achieve the goals.
Okay, and Brian, what type of NEPA document will be needed? What is the timing of that, and who will be responsible for preparing it?
So Federal Highways determined that a categorical exclusion or a CE is appropriate for this project. And Federal Highways, the lead agency, we're in cooperation with SHA as the lead state agency, and we anticipate that NEPA process to be completed later this summer.
Okay. And Jan, we got a question for you here. Does someone need to have a physical office in Maryland to apply for Maryland DBE certification?
And that's a great question, Andrew. The answer is no. Firms located outside of Maryland must be certified by their home state certifying agency before applying to our office.
Okay, and a demolition question, Brian. Will any part of demolition of the existing bridge be part of the reconstruction?
So demolition of the existing structure is anticipated as an early work package in the progressive design build.
Okay. And Jim, understanding that many of the permits would typically take upwards of 18 months, what conversations have been had with the agencies to reduce this time frame?
Well, FHWA and MDTA have, in coordination with SHA, have already begun coordination efforts with the state and federal permitting agencies. The permitting agencies have thankfully committed to working closely with the rebuild team to advance permits in an expedited manner while still adhering to all the permitting requirements.
Okay, and sticking with permitting, Brian, what is the timing for permitting and who will be responsible for that permitting?
Yeah, so this question comes up a lot in our contracts. So Federal Highway, MDTA, and SHA have already started the coordination efforts with the state and federal permitting agencies. And we anticipate that coordination to continue on through MDTA and the GE staff that eventually come on board.
Okay. And Jim, what will be the role of MDTA and SHA during the execution of the project?
Well, MDTA owns, operates, and maintains the Francis Scott Key facility, which included the bridge. So MDTA is responsible for the day-to-day management of the project. SHA will provide oversight through their stewardship agreement with FHWA.
Okay, great. And we have a lot of questions, as I mentioned, and some of the questions may seem similar, but we want to make sure, we get all the questions as we can asked. And so there may be different subtleties. So we are trying to just ask them as they're coming in. So Brian, who will perform NEPA? And please clarify the process for the project. What will the NEPA process look like?
Yeah, so MDTA is securing the NEPA concurrent with the procurement. And as we mentioned previously, Federal Highway has determined that a CE is appropriate for the project. The Progressive Design Build team will identify and provide work to support any reevaluations once that phase 1 and phase 2 process start.
Okay, great. Thanks, Brian. And Jeff, we're going to come to you with the next question. What is the timetable and schedule for posting and awarding all related contracts, including NEPA?
Okay. So for the Progressive Design Build, we're going to be advertising at the end of May. As discussed in the slides earlier, we're looking at a 4-week time for the solicitation and then roughly 6 weeks to award. So the current estimate is roughly 10 weeks from advertisement to award. The GEC will be advertised in June and the CMI will be advertised in July, but we haven't completed the procurement schedules for those at this time. And the NEPA approval is expected to be the summer of 2024, so this summer.
Okay, great. And Brian, will there be an independent cost engineer for this?
Yes, so we will be using an independent cost estimator to prepare comparative pricing analysis for early work packages, any long lead time procurements, and obviously the GMPs.
Okay, and I'm going to stick with you, Brian, on the next question. Will MDOT and MDTA be willing to simplify environmental reviews to ensure a new crossing can be completed in the quickest time possible?
Yeah, so we've kind of touched on this before, but we are working closely with our environmental partners to streamline that process and minimize those timelines. The agencies do understand the critical nature of this project, and they're prepared to collaborate with us on those approvals.
Okay, and Jeff, what procurement process will be used for each phase of work, the planning, the design, construction, and post-construction?
Okay, yeah, great question. So let me take an opportunity to clarify. So the MDTA is using existing MDTA and state highway contracts for the early work and the NEPA work. Contracts for the GEC, CMI, and PDB will be procured using the request for proposal method, as discussed in the slides. And existing MDOT contracts may be utilized to provide continuation of services prior to the completion of the GEC and CMI procurements.
Okay, great. Jim, has the structure type or any other aesthetic requirements been decided? If so, what are they? And if not, how will that be included in a PDB procurement evaluation?
Yeah, this is a good question. No, the structure type has not been predetermined. The exact nature is something that we will be looking to our partner to propose with us. So we'll be collaborating with the Progressive Design Builder so that they can meet the goals of constructability, aesthetics, and cost in their proposal.
Okay, and Jan, when you start the DBE application, can you leave it saved and come back to finish it later? Or do you have to do it all at one time and fill it out, all at that one time?
So this is a really important question, and to answer that, yes. Applicants can save and return to an application. However, applicants must complete their application with all submitted documentation within 60 days.
All right. Well, again, thanks for all those responses to those questions. Just a couple of reminders for all of you who are attending right now. If you do want to ask a question, you go to the Q&A tab and just submit your question. You can also post it anonymously if you want. We are receiving a lot of questions. We obviously have a lot of people who have joined us. So if you feel that your question wasn't responded to, all of the questions will be responded to online at keybridgerebuild.com. So again, if you don't see an answer, please feel free to go to keybridgerebuild.com, and we will have responses to all questions that we receive. So we're going to get back to our questions right now. And Brian, I'm going to come to you. Will the span and location of the new bridge be the same?
So MDTA, in coordination with Federal Highway, has determined that a new structure will be built along the existing center line of the original Key Bridge. And this was set to minimize impacts to the natural and man-made environments.
Okay, and sticking with you, Brian, specific to the PDB, will the PDB include all work, such as the approach roadways, if adjustments are needed, or is it just the bridge?
No, so actually the work will include all the necessary elements to connect the bridge back to the existing roadway.
Okay. And Jeff, a question about potential interviews. Could an interview or presentation be part of the procurement process? The person who's writing in thinks this might be beneficial.
So interviews are not anticipated or presentations just due to the compressed proposal window. So we are not considering them at this time.
Okay. And Jeff, I'm going to come back to you with the next question. The person writing in is saying, we are very interested in working on this project. Please advise how to contact potential primes and get on their teams.
That's a great question. And that's one of the big reasons we like to do these outreaches and these events is that it allows the firms to team with the primes by looking at the attendee lists. So what they'll be able to do is go to the keybridgerebuild.com and get a list of all attendees from today's meeting. And they will have to reach out to them individually to introduce themselves and make those connections.
Okay, great. Brian, what is the proposed extent of replacement, full bridge or main span? Anything again beyond those bridge limits? I know we just touched on that, but if you could kind of clarify that.
Yeah, so NEPA is still underway, and that process will eventually determine the full extents, and that includes the bridge and any of the associated tie-ins to the roadway.
Okay, great. Brian, will the contractor who's selected, will they have any flexibility to close the shipping channels for brief periods to erect certain components of the new bridge?
So since this is obviously a critical entry and a point for the Port of Baltimore, any impacts to that shipping channel for construction operations or for anything going on there for the reconstruction, we'll need to coordinate that with the appropriate agencies, that being the Coast Guard and obviously the Port of Baltimore.
Okay. And Jim, how will replacing the Key Bridge affect other projects, priorities, budgets that MDTA has?
Well, the loss of the Key Bridge has significantly increased traffic volumes on surrounding Baltimore roadways, including 895 and 95. So MDTA is in the process of identifying projects affected by the increased volumes, and we will be looking at whether, how their priority, their scope, and any adjustment to schedule that's necessary as a result of the new Key Bridge project.
Okay. And Jan, are service disabled veteran-owned small businesses being accepted as a DBE?
So, Andrew, I'll give you a very short answer. It is yes, if they are DVE certified. All
right, a clear yes there. What is the plan for the Dolphin Fender system, Brian?
Yeah, so this is obviously an important aspect of any project. And so the peer protection systems will be part of the progressive design build process, and we'll be collaborating with the design build team to address that issue.
Okay. And what if you're a brand new business that has not yet filed business taxes, Jan? How will they approach this?
And so another great question. The answer is if you do not have a business tax return as a business owner, you may submit your personal tax return. For example, IRS Form 1040, IRS Form 1020, or Form 1065. And I would also like to mention again that we do have the application assistance workshop on the 10th at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time.
Great. Brian, will the current foundation be used for the main spans if they meet the criteria? Did you all, as the owner, inspect the substructure for the main approach spans?
So after the impact, we did perform extensive inspections of the existing substructure. However, we do not anticipate reusing those foundations in any new structure.
Okay. And Jeff, can subcontractors and subconsultants, are they able to participate on more than one team?
So the subconsultants will be able to participate on the GEC and CMI contracts. However, if they are part of the Progressive Design Build team, they will not be able to participate on those GEC or CMI teams.
And what major existing utilities are within the project limits, Brian, if you have that information?
Yeah, so on the north side of the bridge, this would be on the harbor side, we are aware there is a BGE Gas, there is BGE Electric, as well as a Baltimore City water main that are in the riverbed.
Okay. And Brian, back to you. Is there a way to build the new bridge tall enough to let the largest mega cruise ships enter the cruise port of Baltimore?
Yeah, and so we are working with the U.S. Coast Guard right now to determine the appropriate minimal air draft height for the new bridge, and that'll, meet the current and future needs for the port.
Great. Does the owner expect any level of private financing to fund the bridge construction? Jim, I'll turn that one over to you.
Well, no, this project is not being contemplated as a P3. All the funding for this project will be federal dollars or toll revenue.
Okay. Brian, I'm going to come to you with the next question. It's kind of a long one. When looking to construct the bridge, will there be any interest in consideration around embodied carbon or sustainability? What is the functional lifetime being considered for the new bridge structure? Is there any interest in innovative products and processes, particularly those that have been shown to accelerate construction schedules? Finally, is there any interest in using GFRP, glass fiber reinforced polymer, or fiberglass rebar? So there's a lot there.
Okay,
so.
yeah, a lot to digest. So MDOT is committed to minimizing the impacts from its activities and products and services. And so, integrating an ethical sustainability as we connect people to life's opportunities. The project will evaluate materials and construction methods during phase one that balance the quality and durability, aesthetics, and costs.
Okay, great. What is the DBE goal for phase one? Is it professional services only? That's what they're assuming, but can you clarify that?
Yeah, what I can say is that the DBE goals for phase one will be in the RFP.
Okay, so refer to the RFP for that. Jeff, the solicitations for the Progressive Design Build, General Engineering Consultant or GEC and Construction Management and Inspection or CMI contracts will be posted to the eMaryland Marketplace. Is there anything else you want to kind of clarify on that?
Yeah, so for anyone interested in participating in any state contracts, we post all of them on that site. But if you want to be notified of a particular category of work, you want to register to Emma at emma.maryland.gov, and you will want to select the commodity codes for the work that you perform, so that if you do GEC work or CMI work or design build heavy civil type work, you will get notified when these solicitations are posted if your account is registered with those commodity codes.
Okay, thanks for that. Will there be separate DBE goals for design and construction? Brian, can you touch on that?
Yeah, so phase one services will have a goal conveyed in the RFP. The goals for phase two, those include both, well, the work is going to include both design and construction. And so those goals will be set as the packages are approved.
Okay, great. We're going to continue on with more questions. I just want to remind everyone again, if you happen to join us late, you can submit your own question simply by clicking on the Q&A tab. Submit your question. We will get that, and we will do our best to respond to it here during this forum. We also will post all responses to all questions received on the keybridgerebuild.com website. We're going to do our best to get to all the questions, but with the amount of people that we have joining us today, we may not be able to do that. So again, keybridgerebuild.com is the best spot to see responses to all of the questions that we receive. So we're going to get back into the questions. Is MDOT available to assist with the application process? After we complete the application, can we request a courtesy pre-review to ensure that we have a better chance of being approved and certified? So Jan, I think that's appropriate for you.
Certainly. So the Office of Minority Business Enterprise offers one-on-one reviews of applications. You can contact our intake department, and I'll provide the phone number. It is 410-865-1269. You can schedule a virtual appointment with one of our intake officers. You can also send us an email, as noted earlier in the presentation. So please note, this review does not guarantee certification, nor does it expedite the application. So our team is here. We are ready and available to assist business owners that have questions or need applications to be reviewed.
Okay, thanks, Jan. Brian, the next two questions are going to be for you, I believe. Does MDTA anticipate a single or multiple advertisements for the construction management of the bridge once it is advanced through design?
Okay, so the CMI will be a single procurement, but we'll have multiple awards.
And one more question to you. Will there be multiple contracts or multiple sections awarded?
So for the progressive design build, that'll be a single selection. For the GEC, that'll also be a single selection. But there will be, as I mentioned previously, there will be multiple awards under the CMI procurement.
Okay, great. So right now it's 2:47. We have a lot more questions to get to. We're going to take a brief break, and then we're going to come back and get right to those questions.
Thank you for joining the Rebuilding the Key Bridge Industry Forum. If you have a question, you can submit it using the Zoom Q&A panel. To adjust the size of the shared screen and speaker video, hover your pointer over the boundary between the two until your pointer changes to a double arrow and you see a gray line separating both views. Click and drag the separator to adjust the size of each view. Thanks again for joining us today.
Okay, we're back. We're going to continue on with our questions that we've received. Again, just in case anyone's joining us, you can submit questions by clicking on the Q&A tab and post your question there. You can do that, and you can also do it anonymously. We're realizing that as we're responding to questions, it may be triggering certain questions that you have. And so feel free to, again, continue to ask questions, and we'll do the best that we can to respond. If we're unable to respond to your question, we will post responses to all questions on the keybridgerebuild.com website. But we are going to go on with our questions. And Jeff, I'm going to come to you with the next question. What will constitute a conflict of interest? How will they communicate conflicts of interest so that firms have ample time to form teams?
Sure. So firms and JV partners that are engaged in our current NEPA activities, progressive design, build, procurement support, and the GE services will be precluded from pursuing the PDB procurement. And the way we'll notify the vendor community is that that list that was shared on an earlier slide will be also shared in the RFP and updated as needed during the solicitation.
Okay, thanks, Jeff. Jan, I'm going to come to you with our next question. If someone owns multiple companies, do they have to submit a separate application for each of those businesses?
So, Andrew, yes, a separate application will be required for each business individually. So each business must be independently operated per DBE standards. So it's really important that you inform our intake division of the multiple business applications that are being submitted. We would love to identify and examine them together during the investigative process, so your application is not split between multiple officers. That's a great question.
Okay, and Jeff, I think you may have touched on this during the presentation, but just to clarify it, will this be a single-step selection process to save time?
Yes, so the Progressive Design Build RFP will be a single-step procurement that will be heavily focused on qualifications, and that was done in an attempt to save time.
Okay, great. And Brian, coming to you with the next question. This person writes that they suggest, as is typically done on Maryland projects, we suggest that all QA remain with the state. Can you kind of provide some information on what's going to be done here?
Sure. So the CMI procurement, that is intended to cover the quality assurance portion of construction management.
Okay. And then, Brian, again, will the PDB team be provided an existing survey for both land and marine upon completion of demolition?
So given the time restrictions that we have right now and the schedules we're looking at, we're anticipating the progressive design build team will be responsible for obtaining surveys and data collection for any of the engineering that's required.
Okay. Jeff, coming back to you with another question. Will the CMI contracts be awarded through an RFQ followed by a technical proposal, or will it be a one-step process?
It will be a one-step process. We're going to be doing a single-step RFP with a combination of your qualifications and technical experience, and it's just an attempt to move these contracts at a rate to help support the Key Bridge rebuild.
Okay, great, thanks. Brian, are the contractor's efforts also being paid under the not to exceed on an hourly basis, or should they be covered by the markup? So,
Yeah, that's a good question. The phase one markup includes profit, general and administrative costs, regional and office overheads, and other direct costs, as well as any other costs not specifically included in the actual direct labor rates. Staff salaries are to be billed under an approved payroll roster.
okay. Jan, a question about the NAICS codes. Are there any limitations to the number of those codes you can apply for?
And so the answer is no. However, the NAICS codes are assigned based on the knowledge and expertise of the business owner, disadvantaged business owner. And so if you are submitting an application with 30 codes, we are going to look individually at each NAICS code and investigate and ask questions and make sure that you have the knowledge and expertise in that particular code.
Okay. And Brian, is there a self-performance requirement, like either a minimum or a maximum for phase two?
So the Maryland Standard Specifications for Construction Materials requires that the contractor perform not less than 50% of the overall contract value. So modifications to this requirement will be discussed with the selected offerer prior to the GMP.
Okay. And Jim, coming to you with a question. Will the PDB teams have responsibility for public involvement, or will the state lead those efforts with the PDB team's support?
Well, the MDTA and the Progressive Design Build team will work collaboratively on public engagement efforts.
Great. And then what will be the evaluation criteria for the proposal? Jeff, that's kind of a broad question, but can you try to provide some information
Yes,
on
so
that?
the evaluation criteria will be detailed in the request for proposals. But what I can say now is that we will be focused on the team's past performance, their approach to the project, and their experience with Progressive Design Build, and means and methods to achieve an agreeable GMP.
Okay. All right, so Brian, we got a few questions here that I think I'm going to direct to you for these next couple. The person's writing in and saying that they suggest that language be introduced in the contract that if the DBT does not come to agreement on the construction cost, the state reserves the right to contract directly with the designer and choose another contractor. Can you kind of touch on that a little bit?
Sure. So there will be mechanisms in place that will allow us to have an off-ramp within the phase, between the phase one and phase two, that would allow us to keep the design team intact.
And will reference documents such as surveys, as-built, vessel studies, geotechnical, et cetera, be included with the RFP?
So we don't really anticipate needing those types of historical documents in order to respond to the RFP, and so there'll be minimal materials provided as part of that.
Okay. And one more, Brian, I'm going to bring to you. What are the domestic product preference requirements for this project?
Okay. So typical with most of our, or if not all our contracts, buy American, build American requirements, and such, that are consistent with the bipartisan infrastructure law will apply to this contract.
Okay. So Jan, for you, if someone is denied DBE certification, can they reapply? And if they do reapply, how long will that process take?
Sure, Andrew, great question. So if a business owner is denied, first we will provide notification in writing of the denial and the reasons why the applicant was denied. However, the applicant must wait 12 months to reapply for the DBE programs, and they will be required to submit a new application.
Okay. And maybe Jen, if just before I get to the next question, just remind everyone again about the workshop that you have, the date, the time, and so forth.
Sure. So the application assistance workshop is on the 10th of May at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. We look forward to seeing all of the participants in today's session at our application assistance workshop. So please feel free, come on, bring your questions. Our investigators will be on the webinar to assist with your inquiries.
Okay, and again, sticking with you for a second, Jan, can an owner have an interpreter or another employee with them during the interview if they are not 100% comfortable with English?
So I will state that the state of Maryland will provide an interpreter to be present during the interview.
Okay. Brian, this person's writing in and suggesting that the contract have the ability to move forward under a cost-plus model during the phase one pre-construction phase. This would allow for a faster start and will keep the parties in alignment with each other. Can you kind of comment on that?
So the phase one work payment structure will include a cost plus fee. And phase one will establish the scope of the project and the elements necessary for phase two in collaboration between the Progressive Design Build team, MDTA, and our stakeholders.
And is the not to exceed amount, will that be specified or is that part of the price proposal?
So we do anticipate stipulating a not to exceed amount for the phase one services, and that will be in the RFP.
Okay, great. Brian, can you elaborate a little bit on the percentage markup for phase one? The person writing in is saying they assume this is the contractor marking up the engineer's work, but can you clarify that?
Yeah, so we kind of touched on this previously. The markup in phase one will include profit, general administrative costs, overhead rates for office and regional, home and regional offices, other indirect costs, and those costs not specifically included in any kind of direct labor rates.
Okay. And Jan, if someone does have DBE certification, how often do they have to renew that certification?
So on an annual basis, business owners must complete the annual review process. And so we will send out notifications 60 days prior to their certification anniversary date. We will also send a second notification 30 days after the 60 days. And this is all done via email with instructions on how to complete the annual review. Again, business owners can email us or contact our intake office. Our team is ready to assist.
Okay. Jim, will there be any, will the contract include any incentives or disincentives?
Well, we have an aggressive delivery schedule, so accelerated completion is desired. Incentives and disincentives will be a collaborative discussion between MDTA and the Progressive Design Build team as part of phase two in the development of the GMPs.
Okay, and Jeff, we have another question focused on conflict of interest. What is the conflict of interest policy for contract participation?
Great question. So for the Progressive Design Build, firms and their joint venture partners that are engaged in owner's assistance at the time of the procurement are precluded from participating in the Progressive Design Build project.
Okay, and Brian, for you, if the procurement is DB, will the contract include demolition?
So we are anticipating demolition of the remaining portions of the bridge that are still there to be an early work package for the Progressive Design Build team.
Okay. All right, Jim, we touched on this a little bit during the presentation about PLAs, but will this be an open forum bid process or a project labor agreement or PLA?
So as we discussed, this is something that has not yet been determined, so we are not sure of the benefit of a PLA on this project, but in keeping with Governor Moore's executive order, MDTA will be evaluating the use of the PLA in the phase one activities.
Okay. And Jeff, a person writing in just wants to confirm whether firms, including leads, can pursue both GEC and the CM contracts.
Yes, so we tried to make that clear in our slides, and we will make sure that's clear in the upcoming RFPs for these procurements, but we do encourage firms to pursue both the GEC and CMI contracts if they are able.
Okay, and Jeff, we're going to come to you again. The initial discussion and news have indicated that substantial federal money will be contributed, if not entirely fund the rebuilding of the bridge. Can you confirm that SBE firms will be included in the disadvantaged business component of any solicitation?
While there's not going to be a separate SBE procurement for this work, SBEs who may also be DBE certified will be able to participate as part of the DBE participation of this contract. And then any SBEs who are on this call can also reach out to the primes and offer their services as well as non-DBE work.
Okay, great. Okay, it's 3:05 right now, Eastern Time. We're going to take another short break. We're going to take a 5-minute break. We are getting questions that are coming in as we're answering them, and we need a little bit of time just to be able to organize them and get ready to respond to them. So we're going to take another short break, and then we'll be back in roughly 5 minutes.
Thank you for joining the Rebuilding the Key Bridge Industry Forum. If you have a question, you can submit it using the Zoom Q&A panel. To adjust the size of the shared screen and speaker video, hover your pointer over the boundary between the two until your pointer changes to a double arrow and you see a gray line separating both views. Click and drag the separator to adjust the size of each view. Thanks again for joining us today.
Okay, we're back. We're going to continue on with the questions. Just a couple clarifications. I had mentioned that we will be posting all of these questions and the responses on the KeyBridge rebuild.com website. We will start to post those in about 48 hours, and it will take time to get responses for all the questions. So as we have responses, we'll put those up on the website. And for those that take a little longer to respond to, we will get those up as quickly as we can. So we are now going to go back to our questions. And Jeff, will there be opportunities for small, local, women and minority-owned businesses?
Oh, that's a great question. And yes, so due to the federal funding, DBE goals will be set for the project. So small, local, women, and minority-owned businesses are encouraged to seek DBE certification if they don't have it already.
Okay, great. And Brian, this was touched on earlier regarding the Coast Guard a little bit, but who and when will coordinate and coordination occur with the U.S. Coast Guard, the Maryland Port Administration, utilities, and others similar to that?
So there's been significant coordination already occurring between Federal Highway, MDTA, SHA, and various other state and federal agencies. We have a weekly permitting team meeting that we've convened, and that includes the U.S. Coast Guard, the Army Corps of Engineers, the Maryland Department of the Environment, and that's to ensure that the process for permitting is executed and well coordinated.
Great. Jeff, question for you. Is there a short list of primes that can submit, or is it open to all that can fit the criteria? And will the GC have a QC/QA team, or the inspection be done via MDOT?
Okay, so there is no restriction on who can propose, as long as the firm proposing can meet our minimum qualifications, and they are not already listed on the conflicted firms on that slide that we shared earlier. The QA/QC work will be handled by MDTA's representative under the CMI contracts.
Okay, great. And Jeff, the next few questions are for you. Again, a question we had this, I think, before, but again, it's good to have multiple questions on the same topic just to make sure we're getting as much good information out as we can. So along with the DBE goals, do you anticipate utilizing SBR, or Small Business Reserve Goals, for the RFPs?
No, we will not be using SBR goals for this because the Small Business Reserve Program is a state program for state-funded contracts. Since this will be a federally funded contract, we will be using the DBE goals, so the RFP will not include any separate SBR goals.
Okay. And again, Jeff, the DBE portion of the work, will it be a separate RFP or under prime control work assignment subcontractor?
So the contracts will list DBE participation goals for the prime, so we will not be releasing any DBE specific RFPs.
Okay. Brian, I'm going to come to you for a second here. Will all three CMI contracts have the same general scope, or is it anticipated that there will be separate work packages for each contract, such as one for the north side, one for the south side, one for the waterway? Can you explain a little bit about that?
Yeah, MDTA anticipates the contracts to be a part of a single procurement, and so they will have the same general scope. And then we'll determine the staffing needs and specific work locations as the work progresses.
Okay. And Brian, again, do you know whether it's been determined whether the remaining approach spans, so the approach spans that are still there, are viable and can be reused?
Yeah, we've kind of touched on this before here. So NEPA is obviously still under development, and it's through that process that we'll make a final determination on what eventually stays or doesn't stay, and then what design elements we need to incorporate into the final project.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Brian. What will be the procurement method for the GC, the design, and the CMA part, Jeff?
Sure. So the MDTA anticipates using a single-step RFP for the PDB, GEC, and CMI contracts.
Okay. Considering that the likely replacement will be a long span structure, which is less common, will the owner allow PDB teams to submit relevant experience completed beyond 20 years? Brian, is there information you can provide on that?
Sure. So we are anticipating having some flexibility for when a team has had past performance on projects.
Okay. And again, a question about single procurement versus multiple procurements. Brian, will the bridge design be a single or multiple procurement?
Yeah. So the progressive design build will be a single procurement. It will not be a multiple.
Okay. Brian, are there international construction standards being applied to this project?
So we anticipate including a list of standards and guidelines within the RFP. It's not going to be a comprehensive list, but it'll allow the selected offer to suggest additional guidelines and criteria as the design progresses.
Okay, and we touched on this during the presentation, but good to review it. How much time will the owner provide to prepare the proposal? Brian?
So we touched on this in the slides. We're anticipating a 3 to 4 week procurement period to allow the development of the proposals.
Okay. And then Jeff, is there a contractors list available?
So there will be a registration list from today's forum posted on the keybridgerebuild.com, and will also be posted to the initial announcement that we made for this event on the MO website.
Okay, so just to confirm, everyone who registered for today's forum, that will go on the website, all of those companies that
Correct.
registered. Okay,
Yes.
great. What will the RFP process be? Technical-based interview, looking for best proposed overall solution, et cetera. Brian, can you provide any clarity on that?
Yeah, so the RFP will be focused on the technical qualifications and team experience as well as past performance.
Okay. And Jeff, will the selection be based on qualifications, or will it be a two-step process with price and schedule included in the evaluation criteria?
Well, this is a single step or one-step procurement, meaning the technical phase is a single step, but there will be a pricing phase of the procurement as well. Selection will be based on a combination of qualifications and price.
Okay. And Brian, I'm going to come to you with the next question. This person's writing in and saying that a recent news article quoted the Maryland Secretary of Transportation as saying that the replacement bridge will be a cable-stayed bridge. Will other bridge types be considered?
Short answer, yes. Other bridge types will be considered, and we feel that will help with suiting the means and methods of the potential contractors that could be bidding on the project.
And Brian, again, due to the extensive effort required to be able to respond to an RFQ or an RFP of this magnitude in a short time, will the procurement timeline be published to the industry as soon as possible?
Yes, we are anticipating the request for proposals to be advertised this month, May of 2024.
Okay, great. And again, we're going to continue on with these questions and the responses. Just a couple quick reminders. As I just mentioned, everyone who registered for today's forum, that information will be on the website, so you will be able to review that information. We will be posting responses to the questions we've received on the website. Probably will start in about 48 hours, and as we get responses to the questions, we will then put those on the website for everyone to review. And if you're hearing something and you're not sure of something and you want to ask a question, there's still time to be able to do that. Simply go to the Q&A tab, type in your question, and we will try to get to that. You can also type that question in and post it as anonymous if that's something you'd like to do. So again, we still have time to get your questions, and we'll do our best to respond to that. So Jeff, coming back to you, will there be any CEI contracts? If so, how many? And what are the anticipated contract amounts and scope of services?
So as mentioned earlier in the slides, we intend to do one procurement series for 3 awards for a not to exceed amount of $60 million. So let me repeat that in case I was unclear. We're going to be doing a single RFP we're going to do multiple awards, up to 3 firms, for a not to exceed total of all awards of $60 million.
Okay. And Brian, we touched on this a little bit earlier, but we'll ask it. Will all materials for constructing the new bridge be required with the Federal Buy American Act? So again, will all materials?
Yes.
And Jim, coming to you over there, will the Federal Highway Administration or the U.S. Army Corps or any other entity be the lead federal agency for this project?
The Federal Highway Administration is the lead federal agency for this contract. The U.S. Army Corps of Engineers is responsible for the Federal Navigational Channel, and as such, they are a cooperating agency on the project.
Okay. And Brian, a question about the environmental process, obviously very important. How will that environmental process work and who will be responsible?
So the NEPA approval is progressing concurrent with the procurement of the PDB. Additional permits will be developed as the design progresses along. Impacts and mitigation will be determined throughout the process of the PDB, and that'll be a joint effort between MDTA and the Progressive Design Build team.
Okay, and you just touched on mitigation. Will off-site mitigation sites be considered to satisfy environmental commitments?
So that's something that we'll be determining as the design and permitting process moves along through the contract. So it'll be an ongoing process.
All right. Jim, will MDOT seek any regulatory relief or exemptions to expedite the design and construction?
As we mentioned earlier, MDTA is meeting regularly with local, state, and federal agencies to discuss the project needs and the aggressive schedule.
Okay. And Jim, I'll follow up with a question. Has coordination with agencies been initiated? Can any notes or meeting minutes be provided from any of those meetings?
So coordination is ongoing, but meeting minutes are not available at this time.
Okay. And Brian, I'm going to come to you with kind of a teaming question. Are joint venture or tri-venture PDB teams permitted?
Absolutely. Multi-venture teams are acceptable and will be entertained.
Okay. Jeff, will laboratory testing of materials be included in the CMI contracts?
It's a good question. So the exact nature of the CMI contracts are currently under development, and the exact scope of work has not yet been determined. But I encourage those wondering if their services would be used in the CMI contracts to register on EMA with the NAICS code for your specialization. That way you get notified when these contracts come out.
Okay. Thank you, Jeff. Jim, what department or firm will be responsible for traffic control or pedestrian safety requests?
Well, in coordination with MDTA, the Progressive Design Builder will control traffic as the construction entity. MDTA will maintain approval authority for their plans. However, due to the nature of this emergency, this section of I-695 is substantially closed and doesn't have traffic, and we don't have any pedestrian traffic in this area.
Okay. And Brian, the person's writing in and saying to accelerate the completion of the project, please consider A and B procurement so MDOT can utilize schedule in the evaluation process. Can you comment on that?
So we're anticipating utilizing an incentive-based contract structure, and that's for the phase 2 portion of the contract, and that's to accelerate the completion.
Okay. And Brian, when will GMP negotiations take place? Will that be at the 30% or 60% design completion levels?
So we anticipate the GMP negotiations to take place around the 50% design completion, but that'll be open for discussions during the development of the phase 1 scope.
Okay, and sticking on with you, Brian, will the PDB team be required to procure right-of-way?
So we expect the the design build team to identify any needs for right of way. However, MDTA will require or will acquire the right of way in support of those needs.
Okay, great. Still have more questions to get to, and we're going to do that in a second here. But just again, you've heard me make these reminders, but again, we have people logging on and coming on, so we just want to make sure everyone's getting this information. The questions will be posted to the KeyBridge rebuild.com site, and we anticipate that will be in about 48 hours, and then we'll get the responses, the questions and the responses up there as soon as we have responses. So it'll be kind of a rolling situation to get those questions and responses up there. And feel free to continue to submit questions through the Q&A tab. We'll do our best to get to them. So Jeff, can you utilize MDOT certified DBE firms in the design process?
Absolutely, yes. We fully expect and encourage DBEs to seek out design work for this phase one of the project.
Okay, great. Jim, next question I'll direct to you. Can you confirm or please confirm to increase the ability for local contractors to participate in the use of local labor, that the project will not require a project labor agreement or PLA? If a PLA is required by the federal government, please confirm that local subcontractors and DBEs will be excluded from participating in the PLA. So there's kind of a lot there in that question, but maybe you could kind of clarify that a little bit.
Well, we touched on it a little bit earlier, but again, the potential impact of PLA on DBE participation will be evaluated by MDTA as part of phase one, which is required in Governor Moore's executive order from November of 23.
Okay. And Jeff, will the DBE engineering firms be accommodated in the GEC and design process?
Yes, so the progressive design build, so the design process for that, plus the GEC work and CMI work that will be coming in later procurements, will be evaluated for DBE opportunities.
Okay, great. So we'll go to our next set of questions here, and Jim, I'm going to direct this to you. Will there be confidential one-on-one meetings prior to proposal submissions?
Well, due to the compressed time frame for the proposal submission, one-on-one meetings are not anticipated prior to the submission date.
Okay. And Jim, will there be site tours for the PDB during procurement?
Again, due to the compressed time frame for the proposal submission, site tours are not anticipated at this time.
All right. Jeff, what is the proposed timing for the procurement and selection for the various professional services, such as the progressive design build, the independent reviewer, the contractor owner, or owner's rep's role?
Sure. So this is mentioned a few times in the slides, but I want to give the information that I can share at this moment is that we do know that the progressive design bill will be advertised in May of 2024, so this month, and we are estimating an award roughly 10 weeks after advertisement. That is, of course, subject to change during the solicitation process. As for the GEC and CMI contracts, they will be advertised in June and July, respectively, but I do not have an award date, an anticipated award date for those contracts at this time.
Okay. And Brian, if environmental mitigation is required, who will be responsible for that?
So we'll be developing any kind of environmental mitigation as part of the phase one of the RFP, and then we anticipate the mitigation work will be included in the GMP then.
Okay. So right now it's 3:30 p.m. Eastern Time, and we are going to take our final short break, and then we're going to come back. We anticipate this forum concluding right around 4 o'clock. So we're going to take about a 5-minute break, come back, and then finish up with our questions, and then we'll end right around 4 o'clock. We'll be back in a few minutes.
Thank you for joining the Rebuilding the Key Bridge Industry Forum. If you have a question, you can submit it using the Zoom Q&A panel. To adjust the size of the shared screen and speaker video, hover your pointer over the boundary between the two until your pointer changes to a double arrow and you see a gray line separating both views. Click and drag the separator to adjust the size of each view. Thanks again for joining us today.
Okay, we're back from our break and we're going to continue. Again, we anticipate going right up until 4 o'clock today. We're going to get right back into our questions. But first, Jan, I just want to give you one final opportunity to remind people of the workshop.
Awesome. Thank you, Andrew. And so I do invite every business owner that is in attendance today, or if you have a friend that is a business owner, please share this information. The Application Assistance Workshop is on May 10th at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. If you are a business owner that is already certified and you are looking to add NAICS codes to your current certification, please join our workshop. If you are a business owner that is not certified and you are seeking certification, please join us on May 10th at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Thank you, Andrew.
All right, great. So Jeff, will the DBE goals be different for phase 1 and phase 2? And also, would there be separate goals for the designer and subcontractor?
So the DBE goals will be set for the specific scope of work for phase 1 and the eventual phase 2 work. The goal will be narrowly focused based on the scope of work for the contract amendments. So there will be a DBE goal for the phase 1 design work, and there will be separate DBE goals for each of the construction packages.
Okay. Our next question is, will an attendee list be provided for this meeting? I'm just going to take this one and say yes, that an attendee list will be available. It'll be available online at the conclusion or following the industry forum. And we'll get that up there and everyone can review the different attendees for today. Jeff, coming back to you, will there be compliance for the DBE goals?
Yes, there will be. Achieving the DBE goals is a critical part of the process, and it will be expected. And we will have our internal agency, Civil Rights and Fair Practices Department doing compliance during the contract.
Okay, thank you, Jeff. Brian, what is the initial time frame, rough schedule for the design and bid dates?
Yes, we've sort of touched on this on some of the other questions, but the procurement for the RFP is expected to begin in this month of May 2024. And then we expect the proposals to be due in about 3 to 4 weeks. The overall goal for this whole procurement is to have construction completed by the fall of 2028.
And Jim, are you aware, or is it possible to obtain some of the salvaged steel for reuse in community-based projects to put it on display and keep it, they have it in quotations, alive?
Well, this is something we can certainly understand an interest in doing, but that's not really related to the progressive design build we're discussing today. That effort is something that MDTA is currently working on, however.
Okay. Jan, if you are an existing Maryland MBE firm, do you have to reapply to MDOT for DBE certification?
And so a short answer, Andrew, yes, you need to be Maryland DBE certified.
Okay. And sticking with you, Jan, for a second, is the webinar that you've been discussing for DBE on May 10th only for DBE applications for this project?
Andrew, no, it is not exclusive to participants looking to be DBE certified for this project.
Okay. And Jim, if as a DBE, if they've been given a task on the NEPA contract, would that be in conflict to be a DBE on the PDB?
Unfortunately, yes. They would be precluded from the progressive design build team. However, they would not be precluded from participating in either the GEC contract or the CMI contracts.
Okay, great. Brian, the question reads, do they need sites to dispose of concrete, asphalt, or brick?
So this has a lot to do with the contractor's needs and methods in his operations. And so those types of locations will be identified by the progressive design build team.
And what about right-of-way? I know we touched on that earlier. Will any right-of-way be required?
So we don't anticipate any. However, if the progressive design build team identifies any needs, MDTA would be handling the acquiring of those needs.
Okay. And then a question specific to alignment. Will the new bridge be built on the same alignment or as the original bridge or close by?
Yeah, so we've coordinated with the Federal Highway Administration and determined that a new structure will be built along the existing center line of the original bridge. And as I mentioned before, that's to minimize impacts to the surrounding environment.
Okay. Brian, a question about the GEC contract. Will the GEC have a role in the development of the bridge design and aesthetic features?
MDTA will have review and oversight responsibilities for the bridge and the aesthetics that are associated with it.
Brian, do you anticipate the use of an independent peer review for the main unit of the new bridge? This would include development of an independent structural analysis.
Yes, so we do anticipate an independent peer review or what we refer to as an IDQM or independent design quality manager. And that'll be for the critical structural elements. And as I said, that'll be a component that will be employed by the progressive design builder.
Okay. Jim, a question about location a little bit here, but would it be possible to incorporate Fort Carroll as part of the center structure for the new bridge? It would provide protection from rogue vessels from running into the tower standards, and the bridge could be supported by the mass of the fort. And the person goes on to say, from the maps, it appears to be within a mile of the original bridge. So can you provide any clarification
Sure.
about that?
As Brian touched on earlier, we're still within the NEPA process, and the current class of action that's been determined is a categorical exclusion, which will lead us to rebuilding the structure basically on the existing alignment. So relocating that bridge alignment to incorporate Fort Carroll, that would add a significant amount of environmental clearance requirements and basically overall time to the schedule.
Okay. And Jeff, this is an important question here I want you to respond to, which is regarding DBE firms and whether they'll be required to find and solicit to firms, or will a list of primes be circulated, or will they be on a list to be selected based on experience? So maybe just touch on the DBE firms and how they, kind of reach out to some of the primes and so forth.
Sure. So this project will be handled in very much the same fashion we would handle any construction project, where we encourage the DBE firms to participate in events such as this, where you'll be able to collect the names of all interested firms that will be posted on the website. And you will have to do a little bit of work. You'll have to find the firms you're interested in partnering with and sending them information about your firm and your responsibilities. Sorry, not in your specialties. The DBE firms will be registered on the MDOT Certified DBE database. And that is the database that the prime contractors who are looking at pursuing this contract will go to find a DBE firm. But if you want to make sure that they call you specifically, we always encourage you to reach out and try to partner early and often with any primes that you think may be pursuing.
All right, great, Jeff. Thank you. Brian, will the RFP set main span requirements such as length of span, vertical and horizontal clearances, and deck width?
So the NEPA documentation is under development. We do anticipate providing some broad requirements on the structure, and that'll be based on the NEPA approval. But the exact nature of the structure, that'll be determined in a collaborative effort with the Progressive Design Build team and MDTA during the phase one.
Okay. And Jim, the bridge design is a sole source single procurement contract. Is that correct?
No, the Progressive Design Build contract, which includes bridge design services and construction services, will be a competitive sealed procurement.
Okay. Brian, has a roadway typical section such as lanes and shoulders been established for the replacement bridge?
So that cross section will be established as part of the NEPA documentation.
Okay. Jeff, the presentation noted, so, I know it was a little while ago, but we did provide a presentation before we started the Q&A, and that will be on the website, so you can go there and review that. But the presentation noted that firms cannot be on both the GEC and CMI contracts. Is that rule applicable to smaller DBEs providing communications and outreach services? And I guess first, just the question, is that accurate in that question?
So it's not an accurate statement. The slides attempted to clarify that firms that participate on the Progressive Design Build will not, by participate I mean, are awarded the contract. The primes and those subs would not be able to pursue the upcoming GEC and CMI contracts. But the CMI and GEC contracts can share the same subcontractors.
Okay. Question about the opening of the new bridge. The person is asking whether they heard correctly earlier that the desired timeline is for all lanes to be open by fall 2028. Brian, can you clarify that?
Sure. Yeah, that is correct. The goal for opening the new key bridge is fall of 2028.
Okay. And Jim, will proposers be given the opportunity to propose the bridge type to be utilized, a truss, suspension, cable stay, or other, or will the structure type be prescriptive?
Right. So the structure type will not be prescriptive. So alternative types that are consistent with the 6 project goals will be consistent. The 6 goals for the project include collaboration, schedule, safety, quality, cost, and aesthetics.
Okay. Brian, do they need staging areas for certain operations?
So similar to the disposal sites, staging areas are really a part of the offer or the progressive design builders means and methods, and so those locations will be identified by the design build team.
Okay, thanks, Brian. Jeff, the next few questions I think I'm going to direct to you. The first one is, will there be DBE sub-goals for this procurement?
No, there will not. So the DBE program is separate from the state of Maryland's MBE program. So the sub-goals that they're referring to are part of the MBE program. When using federal funds, you follow the DBE program, so you will not have sub-goals on your procurement.
Okay. The next question, I'm not sure, there may be a word or two missing, but it states about MBEs being certified with the state of Maryland, that whether they'll be utilized as well, whether we can confirm that.
Sure. So when selecting firms on the MDOT certified MBE DBE database, the prime contractors will be looking for firms that are DBE certified only. MBE certification does not equate to DBE certification, so I would attend the outreach on May 10th if you have any questions, and then reach out to Jan's department if you want clarification on the differences between the certifications.
Thank you,
Okay.
Jeff.
And Jeff, again, by virtue of someone registering for this forum, will those participants be notified directly when the upcoming solicitations are released?
I'm not sure all participants will be directly notified. So the advertisement was listed on the Emma website and sent out to all firms interested in bridge design work. So if you received a notification, you will receive a notification of an amendment to that press release. That's why I think you've been reminding folks, and why we've been letting everyone know that the presentation information will be put on the KeyBridge website within 48 hours.
KeyBridgeRebuild.com.
KeyBridge, Thank you.
All right, great. We're going to continue here. It's 3:50. We've got about 10 minutes left, so we're going to try to squeeze in a few more questions here. Jim, what is the expected budget for the reconstruction of the bridge?
Well, based on our current preliminary planning estimates, we have a range of $1.7 to $1.9 billion.
Okay. And Brian, what should be anticipated for permitting requirements under the emergency replacement scenario?
So MDTA and the environmental agencies are working closely to define the project and the permitting requirements. The review agencies understand the significance of this project, as well as the accelerated nature of the work, and they'll be working with MDTA and FHWA, as well as our progressive design build team that's selected to complete the process as quickly as possible.
And Brian, will the contract to construct the new Francis Scott Key Bridge project utilize the design build, progressive design build, or P3 method? Again, just to clarify in case anyone joined us late.
Sure. So as we've been sort of discussing over the last couple of hours, progressive design build is our method, and P3 terms are not anticipated.
Okay. Jim, would MDOT allow MDTA to utilize existing contracts with other modal administrations to expedite service for this contract?
Yes. So MDTA is allowed to use other modal administration contracts upon approval from the secretary, and as long as they're consistent with the scope.
Okay, great. So, Brian, will the underclearance of the new Key Bridge be coordinated with the ongoing Chesapeake Bay Bridge studies?
So we are working closely with the Coast Guard to determine the minimum air draft height, and that's both for the Key Bridge and the Bay Bridge, and those efforts are being coordinated.
Okay. Brian, another question for you. If a fee is required to be provided during the selection process, they are suggesting that this not be heavily weighted as part of the evaluation process. They also suggest that the state not ask for a total project price at this point, as there won't be much value to this number. Can you provide any kind of clarity or information around those topics?
Sure. So the progressive design build procurement is largely a qualification-based approach. Construction costs will be established through the phase 2 guaranteed maximum price. Once all the requirements have been developed to a point where the risks in construction have been adequately identified.
Okay. And Jan, will the certification process for DBAs adhere to the recently published final rule updates by US DOT?
Yes, yes, it will. And so the rule published on April 9th from US DOT, we are fully compliant in our office with those recent updates.
Okay. And Brian, will there be any technical or financial pre-qualification required for the lead designer entity?
So actually, that might be a question for Jeff.
Jeff?
That sounds procurement based.
Sounds okay. So I'll take this one. So the technical requirements of the RFP will list minimum qualifications. We do not pre-qualify or pre-certify firms to bid on projects at MDTA. So we just ask that proposers confirm that they meet the experience that we're looking for.
Okay. Jim, question. They're suggesting that language be introduced in the contract that puts a cap on limits of liability and liquidated damages. They're going on to say that they have seen pushback on mega projects from sureties for contracts that don't have these types of caps. Can you comment on that?
Yeah, so the contract terms will be eligible for negotiation between MDTA and the progressive design builder during phase 2.
Okay. Jeff, a couple questions I'll direct to you. Who will participate in the selection committee?
Well, the evaluation and selection committee for state RFPs is always kept confidential, so we will not be able to provide that information.
Okay. And will MDTA meet with potential teams prior to the RFP issuance?
Due to the time constraints, MDTA does not intend to meet with any potential teams prior to the RFP.
Okay. We talked earlier about some precluded firms, and so the question is whether the precluded firms from the PDB will also be precluded from the CMI contracts. Jeff, can you talk about that?
Sure. Yeah. So, I appreciate the request for clarifications from this because we really want to make sure firms know where they stand. Anyone who is precluded from the progressive design build will not automatically be precluded from the CMI or GEC contracts.
Okay. We've got about 4 or 5 minutes left here. We're going to try to get to a few more questions before I wrap us up. And Brian, NEPA, stating NEPA is a public process. What is available for them to see? Can you clarify that?
Sure. So yeah, NEPA is a public process, and we'll be seeking public input as part of that. And we're currently working on developing an engagement plan for this process.
Okay. Brian, again, I know this is an important question that many people are, looking for information on. I know you've touched on it, but has the scope of replacement, such as the main span and geometric requirements, vertical and horizontal navigational clearances, been confirmed? And if they have, what are they?
So as we've been kind of saying over during the presentation here, the NEPA process is still under development, and so the exact nature of the bridge and the geometry is still under evaluation. Okay,
great. So we are going to wrap up now. We got through a lot of questions, and we're going to wrap up. And we'd just like to remind you that these presentation slides will be available on the project website at keybridgerebuild.com. And that if you have any further questions or comments, you are welcome to reach out to Brian Wolf directly at the information shown here on the slide. A survey will be sent to you following today's industry forum. We hope that you'll take a few minutes to share your feedback and provide insight on today's virtual event. Your input really does help us to improve future public meetings. Finally, I just want to thank all of the attendees who joined us today, and I want to thank Jim and Jeff and Brian and Jan for the presentations and for responding to the questions. And I want to thank everyone again for attending, and that ends today's industry forum. Thank you.